Welcome to Backchannel. It's the 8th of March. Beware the 8th of March. No, that was the Ides of March, wasn't it? I don't know. This is like a reference that is probably not even worth starting with. I'm Anthony Davis. This is the Anthony Davis Show, as it says right here. You're welcome to the show. You're welcome to join in. You can chat. You can message me. You can go to backchannel.tv and type. You can just do it with your voice if you have an Echo Show device. That's super easy. So be my guest. Do your thing. Make it happen. You're also welcome to, what was the other way? Oh, yeah, that's right. You can follow the show on YouTube. If you have YouTube, then you can just pop in there as well and enjoy the show well, I suppose you can interact because you can use the comments section there as well. So there's lots of ways to be in touch, lots of ways to be part of Backchannel. I'm going to look through the morning papers. We're going to talk about some kind of news stories, some topics that I think you'll find interesting, which include Marjorie Taylor Greene is on a hot streak of stupidity, according to the Daily Beast. So we'll take a look at what she's been up to. She's, of course, the QAnon Republican lawmaker who is just on another planet to everybody else. She really does. She really genuinely is down a rabbit hole so far, even the rabbits have evacuated. Thousands of New York staff face job losses over vaccine rules. We've got that to look at. Elon Musk, his Starship rocket, is close to going orbital. And finally, Black History Month. For every famous woman in flight, there are sadly countless others whose names are not nearly as well known. Among them is Mae Jemison, the first black woman in space in 1992 as an astronaut on the second launch of the space shuttle Endeavour. So we're combining Women's History Month with Black History Month in a kind of symbiotic fashion. Excuse me, choking on my own jokes. It's what you do. Choke on the joke. Just a choke on the joke. Let's see if any of these newspapers are working. None of these. Let's have a look. I don't think any. No, all not found. What does that mean, Carla? Oh, there's a new one. Okay. Rory's just joined us. Rory, welcome. Welcome to Backchannel. I'm Anthony. I'm choking. I'm not joking. I'm just choking. Here we go. They're working now. That's wonderful. So we're going to start with the Bradenton Herald. We'll pop around. We're going to go to Florida first. Republicans pursue sanctions after Russia's invasion of Ukraine. Well, if Republicans had it their way, they would actually start World War III on the proviso that they think that we can win, and we probably can't. So that, is probably something to consider. The no-fly zone is the big issue, obviously. That's what people are most concerned about, and that's something that we'll, continue to talk about as we get through this show together, make it happen. Let me just jump into this one. It says Florida lawmakers have proposed a slew of new actions and other measures in response to Russia's invasion of Ukraine. Representative Carlos Jimenez and Senator Marco Rubio, two Republicans from Florida, last week introduced the Preventing Usurpation of Power and Privileges by Extra-Legal Territories Sedition Act, or Puppets Act, to target the pro-Russian separatist groups in eastern Ukraine, whose conflict with the Ukrainian government in Kiev was used by Russian President Vladimir Putin as a pretext for the invasion. The bill would designate the so-called Donetsk People's Republic and Luhansk People's Republic as foreign terrorist organizations, and sanction any individuals that assist in establishing puppet governments in Ukraine. I don't know if this is necessarily the right way to go. I just don't think they care. I don't think they even care about sanctions anymore. I think Putin now is just into this. He's like, I'm doing this, Whether you like it or not, I'm doing it. Florida goes against CDC and vaccine requirements for healthy kids. It says, should kids get vaccinated against COVID-19? Excuse me. The CDC, which is the official health agency for the United States, recommends everybody 5 and older get vaccinated against the disease to help keep them and others safe. So does the American Academy of Pediatrics. Well, many doctors across the country, including in South Florida, have been recommending vaccinations. However, Florida Department of Health Surgeon General Joseph Ladapo, he announced on Monday during a roundtable discussion on COVID mitigation that the state will no longer be recommending COVID-19 vaccines for healthy kids. He said it would be the first recommendation of its kind in the country. Yes, it would, because you're an idiot. Multiple speakers said that one of the reasons kids don't need vaccines is because of natural immunity, since many school children had already been infected with COVID-19. The decision pits Florida against the CDC. The policy difference also puts parents in a difficult position. Should you follow the recommendations or follow Florida's health department? I mean, DeSantis is behind this, right? DeSantis basically hates the liberals. He wants to win at whatever cost. He is an operator. He is a manipulator. And he has got this guy, this poor guy. I feel actually sorry for General Joseph Ladapo. I feel sorry for him because he's stuck between a rock and a hard place. He needs a job. He needs a good job. He probably needs to feed his family. And yet at the same time, he's having to do the bidding of a far-right extremist governor who is just making a point for political purposes. Never mind the lives of young children. If one child is saved from vaccination, one child, then it would all be worth it, right? You know, my daughter has a vaccine, didn't even get a side effect. Like, what's the big deal? It's only a vaccine. So I did traumatize her the first time. That's true. On the first one, I took her along and I had my flu jab first so she could see what it looked like. And of course, the needle for the flu jab was huge for an adult versus the tiny needle for the child. And she was like, "No, don't put that in me." And it's like, no, your one's much smaller. I made a big boo-boo there. Huge error. Huge error. By the way, Carla, I've worked out how to get a much better picture quality on this show now for the viewers. I've worked it out. I have to set my camera at 720p first, and then once it's running, I then change it to 1080p after it's running. And now I'm getting 5 green lights instead of 4 yellow ones. Right? I've worked it out. It's a little glitch. You have to work with the system, you see? You have to trick it into thinking it's getting a 720. And then once it's getting the 720 and it's comfortable, then you up it to the 1080. Boom. Loves it. Whereas if you start with a 1080, blurry. Can't handle it. It's just a glitch. It might be worth letting the old restreams know, you know? Sorry, we're just having this conversation out loud because, you know, why not? It's a very open forum. Oh, by the way, there's something happening at... in about 45 minutes, there's an Apple event, right? There's an Apple event where they're announcing the new products. So I thought that it would be a nice idea so that you don't leave Backchannel and go and watch it, you know, on YouTube. I will tell you, as it happens, which new product they are announcing. I'm just going to mention, I'll just be like, they just announced this, they just announced that. The people need to know. They just need to know. Speaking in Spanish is with us. Kathy is with us. James, good morning. Cupertino Kims. Cupertino Kims needs to know. Apple is based in Cupertino. She definitely needs to know. And Rory Song. Stacy, yes, welcome. Thank you. Great to know you're there. So I'll keep an eye on that. This is what we're expecting. We're expecting a range of multicolored new Mac Minis with an M2 processor in them. We're expecting possibly an iMac Pro with an M1 or M2 processor, probably an M2 Max or something. We're expecting maybe a new Apple Watch. No, I don't know about that. We're expecting an iPhone SE. I have an iPhone SE, which is basically the cheapest iPhone you can buy. A new version of that with the upgraded chip. No change to the design. Do you know, this phone that I'm using, the iPhone SE, is exactly the same design as the iPhone 6. Didn't change a thing. I'm basically using a phone from years ago, design-wise. And I love it, because it's got a button on it. Love the button. Who doesn't want the button? Give me the button any day. It matters, Carla, it matters. For the people, Carla's asking me if your headphones are on the wrong way round. Does it matter? And the reason it matters is for those poor sound mixers that are writing a song or editing a song where some sound comes out the left and some sound comes out the right. You know, or if you're watching a movie with headphones on and the car approaches from the left and then goes across the screen to the right, you need to hear it going in the right direction in your ears. That's why there's a big L on one and there's a big R on the other. You should know which way round it is because the wire always goes on the left. Did you know that? The wire always goes on the left. That's the thing. I mean, some people have a wire coming from both headphones, but those are kind of, less, not really studio headphones. But with a studio headphone, the wire always goes on the left. So then you don't have to worry like, oh, which have I got the right ear on or not? You just pick it up and put it on that way. You learn something new every day on this show. Just one thing, mind. Just one thing. Okay, back to the newspapers this morning. Let's move on from the Bradenton Herald and go to the news press for Florida. They lead with ladder post, says healthy kids do not need COVID-19. Why are they giving him the credit for this when it's clearly Ron DeSantis doing it? Why are they blaming him? That's why they brought him in, so they would have a scapegoat, so that when a whole bunch of children get sick and the numbers go up, they go, well, it was Ladapo's idea. It wasn't the governor's idea. Defying guidance from the nation's top infectious disease and pediatric health experts, Florida Surgeon General announced on Monday that the state will become the first to recommend that all healthy kids not get vaccinated. I mean, I don't know why the newspapers are not writing the truth on here. Why are they making that the story and not the fact that DeSantis is risking the health of children's lives to appease his base, to score political points with his base? Why is that not the story? So the headline should be, DeSantis gambles children's health on politics. Well, Ron DeSantis' supporters are basically Donald Trump base people. They're like MAGA people. And the thing about South Florida, and as you know, Trump lives in West Palm Beach. Jeffrey Epstein lived down there as well. It's a very exclusive set, of wealthy people, sex offenders. And they're all big, right-wing conservatives. And so, it's just a lot of white people. I mean, Miami has black people, but really Florida is very much a white space. Miami is a bit more mixed because, of course, then you get South Americans because, of course, there's the, just by nature of where it is and what it connects with, and, Puerto Ricans and Nicaraguans and a whole range of interesting different people just by nature of where it is. But at the same time, DeSantis doesn't really care for those people because he thinks that they're all going to vote Democrat. So he just focuses on the white, the white racist view, It's a shame because that's not the way the world is now, I know what you're going to say. You're going to say I'm equating white and racist, and that's not necessarily the case. Well, he basically, he's copied. I mean, the jury's out on DeSantis, right? Some people say he is a highly intelligent, educated operator. He's been to Yale, he's been to Harvard. He's a vet, and he's a lawyer. He's got a lot of experience. He's not a fool. But some say he used Donald Trump, so he modeled his policies on those of Donald Trump's, and being this kind of strongman character and saying things like to kids, we don't need those masks. Take those off. They don't do anything. We don't need this COVID theater anymore. And he refers to climate change as a Democrat stuff. Do you remember all of these little things? But, if he's going to go head to head with Donald Trump, if he's going to be the Republican nominee, then this is going to be a problem, isn't it? I mean, I actually don't think Trump's going to be able to run. I think he's going to talk about running, and I think when it comes to it, he's just going to have too many cases, court cases against him, and I just think it'll be impossible for him to run. And so DeSantis will probably end up, rising to the challenge, and this is why DeSantis is a smooth operator, because he's basically treading water until the time comes when Trump is unable to keep saying that he'll probably run. This is what Trump does. It's a classic mob behavior. You don't say anything definitively ever. You say, we'll see what happens. And then, of course, you are completely in a position to be able to not look like you failed if you choose not to, or if it doesn't work out for you. It's very interesting. The whole thing's very interesting. DeSantis, very interesting, Terrible person. What a terrible person. I really have no love for him whatsoever. Not because he's a Republican, because I think that he's just a political operator. I don't think he does anything for his constituents. Florida is in a terrible state. Okay, also on the news press front this morning. It's got what, sorry? It has good local reporting, that's right. We do believe that their local newspapers are very good. Lee High School class schedules to have big changes. This is the Lee School District Interim Superintendent has announced a change in scheduling for all high schools in the district, causing a stir with educators and students. It says Lee High Schools currently operate on what's known as a 4x4 block schedule, where students take 4 classes daily, each class more than an hour long. These classes rotate each day for a total of 8 class periods stretched across 2 days. And so they're going to just change it up. Students are now going to see all of their teachers on a daily basis for 7 class periods each day. It's a big change. I don't know why they're doing it, I don't know why they're doing it. Maybe they just like change for the sake of change. I'd like to meet someone who is a fan of Ron DeSantis, though. I would really love somebody to ring in and just be like, yeah, I like Ron DeSantis. And my landlord would love him for sure. Stacey says, I'm sorry, but even healthy kids need to be vaccinated so they can prevent themselves from getting sick. Exactly. Thank you, Stacey. Speaking in Siri has joined us. Trent has joined us. Satan has joined us from Tatooine. And Joni as well. Welcome. Been to Tatooine. Very nice. Very nice. Excellent drinks in the cantina. Let's continue with these newspapers. They're kind of interesting this morning. There's definitely something up, isn't there? Definitely something in the air. There was something in the air last night. Fernando. The Florida Times Union leads with favorite ABBA song. Oh, well, where do you start with ABBA? I mean, ABBA is everywhere. ABBA is everything. Fernando, I love. What's the name of the game? Love that one. ABBA are such an unlikely success, aren't they? If you consider, how kind of middle of the road and uncool they are. They're just so good. I've seen the Mamma Mia musical maybe a dozen times. Love it. Indicted is the headline. Zahn Wanamacher faced charges of conspiracy, wire fraud and GEA scandal. This is federal prosecutors unsealed a grand jury indictment charging former JEA chief executive officer and finance chief with conspiracy and wire fraud, casting the two men as the architects of a brazen scheme to secretly extract tens of millions of dollars of personal profit out of the city-owned utility before selling it off to a private operator. I mean, it's just bad people, in positions of responsibility. Putin's forces set another ceasefire as the headline. Evacuations routes lead to Russia or ally Belarus. I mean, this is very interesting what Putin's done. He's saying, okay, we're going to give you these humanitarian corridors where you can evacuate your people, but they can only go to Belarus, which is as good as Russia, or Russia, which is as good as Russia. And so people obviously don't want to go to Russia. Why would you take a humanitarian corridor and end up in the hands of the enemy? Doesn't make sense. You want to go to Poland, or you want to go to anywhere but Russia or Belarus, who are now fighting as well. And then not only that, but he's shelling people. So he's basically saying, there's the corridor, you can use it, there'll be a ceasefire, and then he's littered it with landmines, and they're still bombing people and killing a bunch of people as they try and evacuate. This is a war crime. Putin doesn't care anymore. He doesn't care. Like, even if The Hague phoned him up and said, listen, Putin, you're coming in for a court case. You're up for war crimes. He'd be like, nah. How are they going to get him? What are they going to do? Send an international delegation there to collect him, put him in a van? The guy doesn't care. He cares nothing for international law. Nothing at all. He's Vladimir Putin. Do whatever he likes. And all of these countries, that's why I said about the Republicans earlier with these sanctions. Nobody cares. You're just trying to hit crazy people with rules, and rules are irrelevant to them. He doesn't care. He doesn't care what happens to his own people. The guy's wealthy. He's in his own situation, Okay, let's find another newspaper. Because there's only two ways this war can end, right? There's only two ways this war can end. And in fact, there was a piece written about it this morning. I'm going to quote from it a little bit because, I've been reading up on this and it's kind of important. So it's an opinion piece, but it's a very well written opinion piece. Let me find it. Here we go. It was actually written by Christopher Chiviz. He said there are two likely paths: continued escalation, potentially across the nuclear threshold, or a bitter peace imposed on a defeated Ukraine. Right? This is his analysis. He said, amid the escalation, experts can spin out an infinite number of branching scenarios on how this might end. But scores of war games conducted for the US and allied governments, and my own experience as the US National Intelligence Officer for Europe, suggest that if we boil it down, there are really only two paths towards ending the war. One, continued escalation, potentially across the nuclear threshold. The other, a bitter peace imposed on a defeated Ukraine that will be extremely hard for the United States and many European allies to swallow. He said Putin deliberately frames his operation in Ukraine in the same way that the United States has framed its own regime change operations in Kosovo, Iraq, and Libya, charging that Ukraine has committed human rights violations and is a terrorist state. Well, for good measure, Putin throws in the ludicrous assertion that Ukraine is fascist. These are transparent fig leaves for what is nothing more than a war of brute imperialism. Judging from how things stand now, Putin, having invested so much in this war already, seems unlikely to settle for anything less than the complete subjugation of the Ukrainian government. If the current uneven pace of Russian military progress doesn't accomplish the job, the most likely strategy for doing this is to make an example of a city like Kharkiv, leveling it as if it was Grozny or Aleppo, both cities that Russia has brutally destroyed in the recent past, and then threatening to burn Kiev to the ground. He can accompany this with special forces attacks on the capital to disrupt the civilian population and sow further confusion and discontent. Ultimately, he needs at least to force the removal of President Zelensky and his government. And there it is. That's what's going to happen. Or I'm going to predict it because I've picked a side now. All of this amazing Ukrainian support, women donning camouflage gear and taking Kalashnikovs off of dead Russians and fighting them. It's all wonderful. It feeds us, feeds social media. It's a very satisfying and beautiful thing to see a country protecting itself. But they are going to lose. They are going to lose. And so the reason we have a positive feeling right now, a sense of euphoria, so despite the death and the suffering, is that the Goliath is being defeated by David. That's how it feels right now. But it's not sustainable. I mean, the weapons haven't even shown up yet from the likes of the United States. This is going to end very messily. Zelensky is probably going to have to step aside just for the purposes of peace. And then he'll end up getting a job as he'll get a Nobel Peace Prize and he'll be installed in the United Nations as a diplomat. I think tragically Ukraine will fall. And then, this is the thing about, world politics. Things change. Things change on a dime. I feel very sorry for the people here. There's going to be a huge waste, a loss of life. So Putin can do what? I did a tweet yesterday. I'll read it to you. It was 4 photographs I tweeted of Donald Trump with Vladimir Putin on 4 different occasions, different places. And he's like buttering him up, like they're laughing together, they're shaking hands, they're having a little hug, they're looking into each other's eyes. And I wrote, Putin has been a cold-blooded killer for decades. Everyone knows this. But naive former President Trump gave him a free pass to look like a strongman, destabilizing global security. In short, Trump's idiocy started the Russian-Ukrainian war. I just feel very sad that we are where we are, because, who dies in the meantime? Not the wealthy oligarchs or the leaders. They're protected, they're in secure bunkers, they have body armor, they have protection, they have weapons. The people that suffer are the poorest people, the people who barely have a roof over their head in the first place. These are the first buildings to come crashing down. The first people to die are the people fleeing. The first people to die are the people who have stepped up to fight for their country. For what? It's miserable. And yet, it's essential in a way, because this is geopolitics. This is kind of how it works. This is, unfortunately, the trajectory that nobody can prepare for. And I repeat, if you elect idiots into high office, people who can't do their jobs, you're going to end up in situations like this. You just are. It's the same in my home country of England with Boris Johnson. The guy is a clown. Wherever he goes, chaos will ensue. It just will. That's just his nature. I was watching a video yesterday of him, doing a round table with a bunch of world leaders. The guy's just an idiot. He doesn't even know what to say. I can see him impersonating a prime minister. He's like, what would a prime minister do right now? He's not in it. He's not in the moment. He's not present. He's impersonating a joke prime minister. And all of the world leaders who take their jobs very seriously are doing their jobs. And they're looking at him as if to say, you're impersonating a prime minister. There is nothing Churchillian, there is nothing statesmanlike, there is nothing respectable about this idiot who can't wear clothes, who doesn't brush his hair, and purposely likes to have this kind of, tousled, jocular, clown behavior. The guy's a clown. And it's so depressing. I don't know. I just feel quite, I feel pretty activated by Boris Johnson, and as I'm sure you did with Donald Trump if he was your president, What do we do about it? We keep electing these people. Boris Johnson will get re-elected. If there's a general election, he will get re-elected. They love him. It's almost like, what is England without Boris now? It's like, what is England without the Queen? Boris, because he was mayor of London for a few years before he became the Prime Minister, he's been like a mainstay celebrity for nearly 20 years. I've interviewed him. I never liked him. I find the guy repellent and dangerous. And I used to say to my colleagues in the radio stations, he's dangerous. And they'd be like, he's just a bit of fun. Well, they said the same about Hitler. He was hilarious. So this is what we're dealing with now, We're dealing with this kind of, I don't know, a level of insanity that I am not comfortable with. Stacey is now having a conversation with James and Presley. They're all like talking to each other on the chat room, which is great. Presley's joined us. James says hi, Presley. Presley says hi. Karen's joined. Presley says hi to Stacey. Dismiss is like joining in. Then Presley's like, I like your shirt. I'll take a little picture. Super cute. Bing bong bong. Oh, the Angry British Pounds has joined us from Alabama. Welcome. Great to see you. Who's having a birthday on Saturday? Oh, Stacey. Happy birthday for Saturday. That's exciting. Love a birthday. I haven't had a birthday for what seems like years. Okay, let's go back to the newspapers. Texas Independence Day. Frontier, Texas celebrates the Lone Star State's birthday. It says, having taken 2021 off due to the pandemic, Abilene's Western Museum returned to form to mark this year's Lone Star State birthday. Cute. And council to consider November bond election blue ribbon committee. That's the Abilene Council. This is on the Abilene Reporter News. Let's move on now to the Houston Chronicle for Houston, Texas. Crisis deepens as Russian invasion intensifies. It says the humanitarian crisis in Ukraine deepened on Monday as Russian forces intensified their shelling, and food, water, heat, and medicine grew increasingly scarce in what the country condemned as a medieval-style siege by Moscow to batter it into submission. A third round of talks between the two sides ended with a top Ukrainian official saying there had been a minor, unspecified progress towards establishing safe corridors that would allow civilians to escape the fighting. Russia's chief negotiator said that he expects those corridors to start operating today. I mean, here's the thing, and tell me if I'm going crazy. Maybe whatever is being negotiated in this negotiating space, it's not getting back to the front line. It's just not getting back. And so you have civilians using these corridors where they think there's a ceasefire and there isn't. Because there isn't a ceasefire. They're basically stopping shooting for like 5 minutes. Just so they can say that there was a ceasefire, but there wasn't a ceasefire. There's like 22,000 additional people who have kind of come in and want to help, want to be part of this from different countries. But I just don't know that it's going to be the answer. Russia has got this convoy, this 40-mile-long convoy that is just sitting about 15 miles outside of Kiev. It's basically the convoy that's going to take Kiev. It's going to happen. That's what it's there for. And people are like, oh, it's stalled. Has it stalled because, they've got problems? No, he's totally just waiting. Moscow were the first people to put a man in space. They know how to operate a truck. Yuri Gagarin was like the first guy in space. The Russians know exactly what they're doing. They can build anything. They're great engineers and architects, and they're one of the most skilled people on the planet. They have the resources, they have the knowledge and the know-how. There's no reason why their convoy has stalled for any reason other than the fact that they are purposely, strategically waiting to take Kiev. The moment they get the word from inside that it's time, they're going to roll on in. And trust me, a 40-mile-long convoy taking Kiev is going to bring down the entire city. That's what's going to happen. Mark my words. I'm not a war strategist, but it seems obvious to me. And meanwhile, all the pundits on TV are like, oh, the convoy has stopped. Does that mean it's not happening? No. They're in position. They are literally 15 miles away, which is effectively an hour. They are an hour outside Kiev. So many trucks, so many troops, so many equipment, so many weapons. They're going to annihilate Kiev. And that's how they're going to do it, on the ground. And they'll probably do it, just before the moment that there is enough time for NATO to amass enough troops, or however NATO's going to kind of respond. This is what's going to end up happening, I'm telling you. I'm not stupid. I know what's going to happen. I can predict it. I think the problem is a lot of people don't want to hear it. They don't want to think about it. They feel too sad about it. So they're just like, no, it can't be. That's not what's going to happen. It's what's going to happen. It's happened in every other place. It happened when the Russians went into Afghanistan. I mean, admittedly, they failed and lost, but they had a good go at it. They devastated the country. Also on the front of the Houston Chronicle, as rents soar, non-profit finds new solution. Group buys complexes to keep costs affordable for tenants is the headline. Metro's Silver Line far below ridership estimates. It says this is basically no one's getting on the subway. No one's getting on it. I think this is actually the bus service. A big grey bus slices through the crowd on a chilly morning, alone in its lane southbound towards Williams Tower, and its next station serving the Galleria. No one gets on or off, as scores of cars and trucks zip by. It's so interesting how in so many cities they haven't been able to make public transit work. Right? It's like public transit just doesn't work. In London, they've done the opposite. They've made it so complex and difficult to own a car and so expensive to own a car. You literally have no choice other than to endure a disgusting bus. I used to use the bus in London all the time. They designed this bus. This is another Boris Johnson thing that was a hugely corrupt tender process and fake competition for design of a bus and everything. It was a disaster. And then it got designed, this new bus for London got designed by this guy called, what was his name? Hemingworth? Anyway, he basically stole the design. They had a competition and he's famous for stealing designs, this architect. He famously designed the Olympic cauldron. It was a whole load of tulips that folded out. He ended up settling a court case where it turns out he ripped off the design. Anyway, this bus was designed by various people, Norman Foster and Partners, all different, Mercedes had a go, all these different organizations had a go at designing a bus. And they ended up not using any of them and getting this guy to just do his own. And he ended up copying a bunch of the designs. And the whole thing was a scam. And he'd never been on a bus. Thomas Heatherwick. His name's Thomas Heatherwick. The guy had never been on a bus. So listen, let me tell you about this bus just for a second. I know that, this is a bit of a diversion, but let me tell you about this bus and why it's so wrong, right? The whole point of replacing the old Routemaster bus from London, which has been around since 1948. That was the classic RM, then came the RT. The RT came first, then the RM came in 1953. These are great buses, classic buses. They're narrow. They can take around 70 passengers. You can stand. They have one door at the back, which is not even a door. It's an open platform. You jump on and you jump off. There's no other doors. Jump on, you jump off. Go upstairs, go down the front. The driver sits in a separate cab at the front. They were designed for the streets of London, which are very narrow, designed for horse and cart. The RM, the classic RM, was the perfect bus. Worked for years. But of course, with climate change, they needed an environmentally friendly bus, and capacity needed to increase, right? So they needed a slightly bigger bus that did not have any emissions. So what did they do? They built a bus with more emissions than the original RM. Because the buses were overheating, because the engines were so small, the generators were so small, the batteries kept failing, because this was all new design, new technology. They were designed in Ireland. And they were designed in Northern Ireland. Tell a lie, they were designed in Northern Ireland. And they ended up not being able to use the batteries. Because when you turned on the air conditioning, it just screwed up the whole system. And why did you need air conditioning on a bus? Because it had no windows. They designed a glass bus with no windows. Not a single window opened on the bus. So they basically, for environmental purposes, had a battery that didn't work, an engine, a generator that was too small, and so it had to use its backup, which was gas and emissions, and because it was on the backup, it was putting out more emissions than the original Routemaster. Meanwhile, everyone's on it and they are sweating because you can't open a window. Homeless people live on there, so it stinks, right? People bringing food on and people haven't washed in days, and so it stinks. And you couldn't open a window, and it was a disaster. And it was too big, it was too wide. Here's the other thing. If you ride a bus and you sit on the upper deck and you want to change buses, because invariably, if you're poor, to get home, you don't have your own car, you have to take two buses, because the bus that you need doesn't go the whole route. So what do? You look out the back window of the upper deck to see if your other bus is coming, so you can quickly jump off your bus and get on the other bus to get home, right? Guess what? There was no rear window on the upper deck. They didn't put a rear window on the upper deck. So all these poor people sitting on the bus, looking out to see if their bus is behind so they can jump, but can't see out. The only way you could see out the back was by going halfway down the staircase. It was a disaster. On the lower deck, you couldn't sit without banging your knees against other people. They had like a raised section above the rear wheel with two seats facing each other. They were so close to each other, people's knees were banging together. The rear door, they had a platform at the back. They said, hop on, hop off. No, they then changed the rules. European law says you can't hop on and hop off a bus anymore. So they started retrofitting a door to the back of the bus that's supposed to be open. And the door didn't fit. It pinged inwards and it would hit passengers as they were waiting to get off. This is all Boris Johnson's idea. And then the cost. It cost £1 billion. What you could have done is taken the old RM buses from the 1950s and set up a factory to make a retrofitted electric motor and battery pack for it. And just converted all of the lovely old buses into electric. And it would have been amazing because we would have kept the integrity of the old bus. We had plenty of them. The only thing that was wrong with them was mechanical. And so if you switch to an electric motor, then you have no more mechanical problems. No. They wanted a new bus for London. It was a disaster. Started on Route 38. That's where they trialled it. I'm a big bus fan, Carla. I don't know if you're aware of this. Love buses. I've driven buses. Driven buses. Love it. The only thing that I liked about the new bus for London was the moquette. You know what moquette is? Moquette is a great word to learn. M-O-Q-U-E-T-T-E. The moquette is the fabric design for the seats. It was made famous on the London Underground. There's a classic London Transport moquette. And they did a beautiful moquette on the interior of the new bus. Anyway, I hate it. And it's a disaster. So then they had to retrofit windows, because of course the air conditioning never worked, to get rid of the smell and the heat. So they now have little slidey windows at the top. They've all been retrofitted. And as far as I know, I don't know if they're now still running on gas or whether they've managed to get the electric motors going now. But the whole thing is a disaster. And they're too wide as well. They're much too big. So when they turn, they kill people. Cyclists and the like. They're just huge. This is why buses never caught on in America, apart from the Greyhound bus, of course, cross-country Greyhound bus, which is kind of a wonderful tradition of American culture. In London, the red bus is part of the culture. They screwed it up, good and proper, such a shame. Stacey says the bus is bringing back a bad memory. Oh, I'm sorry. She said, when I rode the bus home from school, I got hit by the bus driver. What? Oh, man. It's not too late to report that, Michael's joined us, first time on the show from Virginia. Welcome. We got Melinda in Virginia, Bella in Northern Virginia, James in Arizona, Stacey's in Texas, Michael's in... There's a lot of Virginia action. Is everybody watching in the same household? Satan, Joni, Theo, Sarah, Presley, Karen, Dismiss. Great. I'm big in Virginia, yeah. So is Joe Manchin. So that's the Houston Chronicle. Let's move on, shall we? San Antonio Express News. This one's for you, Stacey. Humanitarian crisis is growing worse, is the headline. It says the humanitarian crisis in the nation deepened on Monday as Russian forces intensified their shelling and as food, water, heat, and medicine grew increasingly scarce. In what the country condemned as a medieval-style siege by Moscow to batter it into submission, a third round of talks between the two sides ended up with a top Ukrainian official saying there had been minor, unspecified progress towards establishing safe corridors that would allow civilians to escape the fighting. Yeah. Let me see if I can share my screen. Let's have a look. Can you see this? Yeah? Are we seeing this? Are we seeing you seeing it? No. Oh, I thought it was working. I've just tried. It's giving me. Yeah, no, I've got it working, but it says that I'm showing it, but maybe I'm not. Okay, I'll have to come up with another way of doing it. I think maybe the problem is I should be doing it in Chrome, and I look at the newspapers in Safari. I think that might be the problem. Anyway, not your problem. I know you've got your own stuff to worry about without me dealing with this. Teams COVID risk no easy call. It says every Monday, Monica Ramos, 2 children pay a visit to the nurse's office for a nasal swab test. The younger of the 2 is in 4th grade. Jeremiah is on the school basketball team. Ramos, a systems administrator, worries that he'll contract COVID-19 from a teammate or an opponent. Jeremiah is fully vaccinated but too young to be eligible for a booster. For parents intent on protecting their children from COVID, interscholastic sports are a roll on the dice. There's no way for some parents to know whether their kids' teammates or members on opposing teams have been tested for the virus or been vaccinated. San Antonio area school districts do not maintain a standardized COVID-19 testing policy for students, faculty, and staff. Some districts mandate weekly testing. I mean, it's very interesting, isn't it? The fact that everything is being decided so locally means that if there's going to be a football match or a soccer game or a volleyball game or some kind of, competitive sports between 2 teams on rival schools, the rival school might be in a different district and therefore have different COVID rules. And then you're intermixing everybody. Just a thought. Nice tunes today. Very nice. Very, very nice. Oh, you did see it. Interesting. Maybe it did work. After all that, maybe it did work. That would be very good to know. Thank you, Stacey. Appreciate that. Sharing the San Antonio Express cheered me up. She says, I'm seeing it. Well, there we go, you see. Maybe it is working. Amended rule targets $1.25 billion verdict in ad. San Antonio personal injury lawyer could no longer advertise a $1.25 billion verdict judgment that he secured for an alleged sexual assault victim without disclosing that the client didn't actually get anything. Oh, my goodness. There's so much corruption in and around and in and amongst litigation in America. You know? Nobody wins. Nobody wins. Let's move on. Los Angeles Times. That's where I am. Los Angeles. Russia pummels civilian areas. Humanitarian crisis deepens in Ukraine as food and water start to run out. It says a dozen days into a devastating war and a burgeoning refugee crisis, Russian forces on Monday launched withering new attacks on civilian areas and strategic centers in Ukraine, seeking to cripple the country's defenses and its established supremacy over its vital Black Sea coast. Amid a deepening humanitarian catastrophe in besieged Ukrainian cities and towns, representatives for the two sides held a third round of talks on Monday, but reported no political progress toward ending Europe's biggest ground war in decades. And a tragic photograph of a body of a civilian in a residential area of Irpin, one of the Ukrainian cities under attack by Russian forces. The third round of talks produced no political progress toward ending the fighting. And a photograph of a soldier having a smoke as his Ukrainian squad braces for Russian artillery fire while defending Irpin. They're very brave, these people. Really very brave. It's a lot. It's a lot. Should we check the US News Update now? It's a daily podcast that I bring you, and you can download it wherever you get your podcasts. It's a chance for you to find out what's happening across the United States. Less so internationally. It's more about America. But we're going to play it now, and you can have a little listen, see how it floats your boat. It's Tuesday, March 8. From the Volley Network, this is your daily US News Update. I'm Anthony Davis. The US Supreme Court has rejected requests from Republicans in North Carolina and Pennsylvania to overturn electoral maps imposed by the state Supreme Court in both places that make elections more competitive. The justices ruled 6-3 on Monday not to block the new North Carolina maps from going into effect, with Justices Samuel Alito, Neil Gorsuch, and Clarence Thomas saying they would have paused the state Supreme Court's ruling. In the Pennsylvania case, there were no noted dissents from the court's decision. That case will now go to a panel of 3 federal judges, and Republicans can appeal a ruling from whatever they decide to the U.S. Supreme Court in the future. Both decisions are a win for Democrats politically, as well as voting rights groups that have turned to state Supreme Courts recently to try and police partisan gerrymandering. The U.S. Supreme Court said in 2019 that federal courts could not police partisan gerrymandering, but said state constitutions could. Over 170 million Americans who were adults in 2015 were exposed to harmful levels of lead as children, a new study estimates. Meanwhile, Donald Trump has said the US should put Chinese flags on F-22 jets and bomb the hell out of Russia in retribution for its invasion of Ukraine. The Washington Post reported on the remarks that were made last Saturday night. The former president said, "And then we say China did it, we didn't do it, China did it, and then they start fighting with each other, and we sit back and watch." Trump has faced severe criticism for praising the Russian leader since the invasion began. Your daily US News Update is part of the Volley Network. To hear my live daily morning show, your Amazon Echo device, to open Backchannel. You get your podcasts. There we are. Here we are. How lovely to see you again. It's Tuesday morning. It's the 8th of March, 2022. Welcome to Backchannel. I'm Anthony Davis. Yes, the Donald Trump story is quite nuts, isn't it? That he said he should change the design of the airplane so that the Russians think it's the Chinese attacking them. I mean, the guy is off his rocker. You know, literally like lost his. I mean, he always lost his mind, but I mean, this is like worse than ever now, isn't it? I'm just going to get the Apple event up so I can kind of give you some advice as to what's going on. You know, there's a lot to watch. There's a lot to consider. You know, it's going to be a big part of the show now. You know, I'm a big Apple fanboy. I've been with Apple as a kind of consumer customer person since like 1992. That's how long I've been, you know, in on it. Love it. Big fan. Okay, so let's move on with some of the newspapers in the meantime, whilst Tim Cook gets himself together. Did I tell you that I met Tim Cook here in Los Angeles, the boss of Apple? Coincidentally, I went to an Apple store that had just opened downtown. It was a really good Apple store. It was an old theater, from an old like TV theater on the main street downtown on Broadway. And Apple just spent like gazillions converting it into an Apple store. So I would go along on opening morning just to kind of have a look, and Tim Cook's standing right there, and I'm like, "Hi, Tim." It's like, "Hi," and we'd take a photo and have a little chat. Unfortunately, I look really ridiculous in the photograph. Like the one photo that I would love to show everybody. He looks great. The one photo I would love to show everybody is the picture of me and Tim Cook. I look like such a dork. I don't know why, like my pants were on sideways, and I look like fat in the face and overexcited, and my hair was anyway, it's a terrible photograph. It's a terrible photograph. And yet, it's kind of one of the best, most important photos I've ever taken. Me and Tim. Together at last. Together forever. Carla, I've just sent it to you so you can see it. You can see like what an absolute dork I look. I just feel like, I don't know, I just feel like that would have been the day that I would really needed to have looked extra handsome. If I'd have looked extra handsome that day, I could have shared it with the world. I look like a dweeb. Like a proper dweeb. Me and Tim. Brothers. From another mother's. I'm right, aren't I? Aren't I right? I look ridiculous. EPA proposes stricter rule to cut smog. This on the Los Angeles Times, obviously. The EPA and smog is obviously a big issue here in Los Angeles because the pollution is so bad. So we're going to kind of look at this together. It says the Biden administration is proposing a new emissions standards that would reduce smog-forming pollutants. There's a fly in here. I'm just trying to kill it. I'll just stop it from attacking me. I think it might be a little mosquito. Smog-forming pollutants from tractor-trailer trucks, buses and other heavy-duty vehicles as part of a multi-year plan to improve air quality across the nation. The draft rule proposed by the Environment Protection Agency, which would take effect in model year 2027, would reduce emissions of nitrogen oxides from gasoline and diesel engines by as much as 60% in 2045. Why is there going to be any diesel and gas vehicles in 2045? Why are we even doing this? Like, why can't we just be like, okay, we're done now. We're done. Just doesn't make sense to me why we're still talking about gas. I mean, you may have heard today Biden's agreed to shut down the pipeline. We're not going to take in any more Russian oil, right? It's a big thing. But maybe they should have done that anyway, just from a climate crisis perspective. Why wait for a war? India's future as a secular state is in jeopardy. It says Nasir Ali was selling tennis shoes in his small town of east of New Delhi when a dozen men surrounded his street stall. He instantly recognized them as local goons, members of the Bajrang Dal, a Hindu nationalist group with a long history of violence and rising profile. They accused the 28-year-old Ali of insulting their faith because one of the brands he carried was Thakur, which is also the name of a prominent Hindu caste. Now, how can you sell shoes with that written on them when you're a Muslim? One of the men shouted. Ali explained he meant no disrespect, that he didn't create the brand, he just sold it. And then the men called the police, who booked Ali for something. I don't know, it says see page 5. It's happening everywhere. This kind of extremism is happening everywhere. Russian oil will ban Wade. Biden considers easing sanctions on Venezuela to offset the loss of imported crude oil. Fear over the food supply. Conflict could affect people in the Asia and Africa as farmers are forced to fight or flee. And Ukrainian troops dig in their heels as Moscow's tanks advance. Soldiers in Irpin, a suburb of Kiev, vow to fight to the end. They are so brave, these people. I don't know how they do it. And then humanitarian crisis deepens in Ukraine as food and water start to run out. is the headline there as well. Okay, let's jump onto another newspaper. Who's pinging me? So many people pinging me right now. Oh, Stacey has to go. Thank you for the picture of the San Antonio Express. You're welcome. Freddie Fazbear has joined us. Such a great name. Love it. The New York Times is next on our list of newspaper reviews to reviews. The New York Times. Let's have a little look at the front of it. Shall I maybe see if I can share that as well while I talk about it? I think I probably can. Let's have a look. I think it's going to be this one. Here we go. Currently sharing the New York Times. Hopefully you can see this. I have to slide. Yeah. Yeah. I can't see that, but I'll be honest. I think it might be different on this guest one. I think it's different, but I think that I've got it as an active window now. Yeah, there it is. Let's see if I can scroll up and down. Yes. Wow. Look at that. Desperation grows for trapped civilians is the headline. Amazing. Yes, it says President Biden came under pressure on Monday to ban Russian oil imports into the United States, forcing the administration to consider action that could further punish President Putin of Russia, but exacerbate high gas prices that are hurting consumers at home. If that's the least of our problems, high gas prices, then so be it. Just stop driving, just like work from home. And we're going to have to work it out. I just think we're going to have to work it out. It says on Monday, a bipartisan group of American lawmakers agreed to move ahead with legislation that would ban Russian energy imports in the United States and suspend normal trade relations with Russia and Belarus. Where did that go? Oh yeah, some European countries which are highly dependent on Russian energy have expressed a willingness to reduce their reliance on those imports. Jen Psaki, the White House press secretary, said that no decision had been made at this point by the president about a ban on importing oil from Russia. Well, I actually think that might have already changed now. I think that might have already changed. So, yeah, interesting. Let's switch that off, and here's my face again. What a beautiful sight. Who knew that we could do such things? No food or heat for targets of onslaught, it says. Increasingly indiscriminate Russian shelling has trapped and traumatized Ukrainian civilians, magnified fears on Monday of an intensifying humanitarian crisis that has already left tens of thousands without food, water, power, or heat in besieged cities of southern Ukraine and elsewhere. Okay, so that's how the New York Times leads this morning. Is there anything down the bottom here? Oh yeah, justices give Democrats a win in 2 gerrymandering cases. This is very interesting. We touched on this a little bit yesterday. The Supreme Court on Monday allowed congressional maps that had been approved by state courts in North Carolina and Pennsylvania to stand, giving Democrats an advantage in this year's election in 2 key states. In issuing the orders, the Supreme Court rejected requests by Republicans to restore maps approved by GOP-controlled state legislatures. Those district lines were thrown out and replaced by courts in both states after challenges by Democrats. So that could be good for the Democrats in the midterms. Hate for Russia, dark and deep, boils in Ukraine. Trapped in his apartment on the outskirts of Kiev during fierce battles over the weekend, the well-known Ukrainian poet, his name is Alexander Vanets, he composed a few lines that encapsulated the national mood. I shout out to the whole world, he wrote in a poem, published online by his fans, who have since lost touch with the writer and were worried that he may have fallen behind Russian lines. I won't forgive anyone. If there is one overriding emotion gripping Ukraine right now, it is hate. It is deep, seething bitterness for President Putin, his military and his government. But Ukrainians are not giving a pass to ordinary Russians either, calling them complicit through years of political passivity. The hatred is vented by mothers in bomb shelters, by volunteers preparing to fight on the front lines, by intellectuals and artists. I mean, they make a good point. You know, if Putin has been on the throne for 22 years and everybody, not everybody, but people knew that he was a bad person, then why did no one do anything about it? You know, why has there not been any kind of Russian uprising? I mean, I know that it's a totalitarian state, and I know if you seek to try and change anything legitimately, like Alexei Navalny, who, of course, was eventually poisoned. Alexei Navalny was like the one hope for Russia. He was like unofficial opposition to Putin. They poisoned him, and then they arrested him. And now he's, you know, serving at the pleasure of Putin. But maybe now is the time. Maybe now is the only time to overthrow Russia. The problem is so many people who live in Russia, they just play along, you know. They like to keep the status quo. They don't want to get... Because I didn't realize that members of your own family might shop you in, might tell the authorities. Oh yeah, that's how it works. It's like a cult. You literally can't trust anybody. If you're a dissenter, anybody could dib you in to the authorities. Call the police. Call the secret police. Romania, when it comes to war, generals say mass matters. Nearly 2 weeks into President Putin's invasion of Ukraine, Europe's largest land war since 1945, the image of a Russian military as one that other countries should fear, let alone emulate, has been shattered. Ukraine's military, dwarfed by the Russian force in most ways, has somehow managed to stymie its foe. It says Ukrainian soldiers have killed more than 3,000 Russian troops, according to conservative estimates by American officials. Ukraine has shot down military transport planes carrying Russian paratroopers. It's downed helicopters and blown holes in Russia's convoys using American anti-tank missiles and armed drones supplied by Turkey. I mean, why don't we hear more about this? The Russian soldiers have been plagued by poor morale and fuel and food shortages. Some troops have crossed the border with meals ready to eat that expired in 2002. Oh, God, really? And others have surrendered and sabotaged their vehicles to avoid fighting. I mean, that would be amazing, wouldn't it? If the entire Russian military decided to sabotage the war themselves and refuse to fight. Because that's all Putin has. Putin only has his military. He's not going to go in himself. Can you imagine if, like, the way to fight this war would be to drop leaflets on the Russian military? Literally drop, like they did in the Second World War, you know, the propaganda leaflets that were dropped by the Germans, or the Nazis, I should say, leading up to 1939, you know, to kind of convince people of this propaganda. Maybe we could do that with the Russian army. We could start to educate them. We could blanket send them text messages that have got links to video evidence of what Putin's really doing, and the fact that Vladimir Zelensky is no fascist. And maybe you convince them in an intellectual way rather than in physical violence. You intellectually brainwash them, or unbrainwash them, I should say, so that they lay down their arms and they're like, fight with Ukraine, be with Ukraine, take the side of Ukraine. Because a lot of they're kids, a lot of these people. They thought they were going on a military exercise, you know, on a practice. They didn't realize that they were going to war. They didn't want to go to war. It's just beggars belief that some of them don't know the truth and are not spreading it amongst the ranks. But maybe they're not. Maybe that's just not how it works. Let's go to Ohio and the Journal News now. Gas prices continue to rocket in Tri-State is the headline. First time since 2008, prices have reached $4 a gallon. The price of regular gasoline broke $4 a gallon on average across the U.S. on Sunday for the first time in 2008. Since 2008. The Tri-State area on Monday, a gallon of unleaded gas hovered in the area of $3.78. Prices are expected to keep moving up this week. That represents the second largest jump in average national prices in a week. As Russia's war on Ukraine continues to evolve and we head into a season where gas prices typically increase, Americans should prepare to pay more for gas than they ever have before. There it is. Westchester military contractor goes out of business. This is it's a company that created armored products for various military and commercial vehicles going out of business. A photograph of Ukrainian women receiving weapons training on the outskirts of Lviv in western Ukraine on Monday. Amazing, really, just seeing this, you know. A detective who cracked case. We were just doing our jobs is the headline. This is Middleton officers to be honored for work in solving boy's murder. I kind of feel, just regarding the gas prices thing, because it's obviously a big thing. You know, I have driven an electric car for as long as I've lived in America, which is 5 years. So I don't have much sympathy with gas people. I understand that not everybody can afford an electric car. There are ways around this. But my point is that, you know, America needed a kick up the tush to switch to electric. Because there are so many people I've spoken to here who don't get the magnitude of the climate crisis. The Amazon rainforest is now like beyond the point of no return. This was announced in a study yesterday. There is basically going to be no more Amazon rainforest. I mean, the ecosystem of the entire planet is over. It's over. We're going to have to start I don't know what we're going to have to do to live on this planet, but it's going to get increasingly more difficult. My point is that maybe an increase in gas prices to a point that people just are like, I'm just going to have to get an electric car. Maybe this was a necessary push. Unwarranted and unhelpful and unfortunate in many ways, but maybe this is just it. This is what we're just going to have to accept now. I'm just going to have a little look at the I'm just having a little look at the Apple event, just to see what they've announced. Here we go. Apple's new iPad. What? You don't watch the Apple events? Twice a year? Yeah. The Apple event is where Tim Cook gets on the stage and announces all the new products. So they're basically launching a new iPad Air 5. It's getting the M1 chip. Do you know, I might actually be in the market for one of those. The iPhone SE in new colors, starlight, midnight blue, and red. Better battery life, improved camera, A15 chip, 5G connectivity. And that's going to be $429. So it's actually going to be $30 more expensive than the previous model. That's interesting. I thought they were going to keep the price. Also a new iPhone 13 green and iPhone 13 Alpine green. Kind of just new colors of the iPhone 13. That's basically what they've announced so far. Just those things. Oh, Apple TV Plus is to stream live MLB games with a weekly Friday Night Baseball doubleheader. The iPad Air 5 is going to be interesting for me. You know, the only thing that frustrates me about those is I have the iPad Pro and it has 4 speakers on it. And so you get sound out of both sides. When you're looking at it in landscape mode, you get sound out of stereo sound, and all the other iPads just have speakers on one end. So you don't get that stereo effect, but maybe it's not a problem. I don't know why I'm complaining, you know. I'm just Oh yeah, I got in line for the iPhone 3G. I stood in line for nearly 7 hours for the iPhone 3G. Do you remember that one? Yeah, I was thrilled to be in line. I queued outside an O2 store on Victoria Street. But otherwise, you know, I like to buy second-hand Apple products and fix them up. You know, because I think I've mentioned this to you, but, you know, the laptop that I have is from 2013. The iMac that I use is from 2011. You know, so one is 9 years old and one is 13 years old. And they're still going strong. They're completely usable as like normal. No delay, nothing. Carla, the one you just bought, I think is a 2017 model, isn't it? or 2018. I'll fix that up for you. Don't you worry. I'll log in and fix it up for you. Or just make an Apple appointment at the Genius Bar and take it in and they'll sort everything out for you. You know, it's free. And then you get to go into that wonderful Apple Store space, which I love, you know. They have trees indoors, a lot of these places. Who do we have? David's just joined us from Idaho. Light is popped in as well. Welcome, Light. Speaking in Italian is with us from Maryland. Lee and Casey, welcome to Backchannel. It's 10:23. We're going to catch up with Hal in about 20 minutes' time. Find out what's happening on his show later today. Let's move on with some of the stuff that we've been looking at together and discussing. Chicago Tribune is the final newspaper. Civilians struggle as food and water dwindle in several regions is the headline. Russian shelling of cities intensifies. So we've talked a bit about the US targeting oil and gas sector, and the European Commission has said it would reduce demand for Russian gas by 2/3. The EU gets 40% of its gas from Russia. The measures are meant to hurt Russia with its economy heavily dependent on energy exports, but such action could also send prices soaring. Russia earlier warned it may close its main gas pipeline to Germany if the West bans Russian oil. The UK is to phase out Russian oil imports by the end of the year. US President Joe Biden is going to make an announcement at 10:45 local time. So that is, well, I think he's already made that announcement. I think he made that announcement this morning. This is the ban of Russian oil here in the United States. Okay, let's move on with these conversations. Gretchen Whitmer, we're going to talk about her, the trial due to begin in the U.S. Governor's kidnapping plot. You remember this story? This was 4 men accused of a plot to kidnap the Michigan's Democratic governor. She's due to begin with a jury selection today. Prosecutors say the men, some of whom are alleged militia members, targeted Gretchen Whitmer over COVID rules she imposed early in the pandemic. Lawyers for the accused say the government's evidence is flimsy and proves nothing more than a boastful talk. The trial in the city of Grand Rapids is expected to last about 6 weeks. I mean, this is fascinating, isn't it? Because this is an increasing shift that we're seeing in America of regular people, patriotic, nationalist people who have become increasingly far-right extremist people who will consider planning a kidnapping plot. I mean, what happened to the rule of law? She's a lawmaker. She can announce whatever she likes. You voted for her. According to the FBI, which says it interrupted the plot 17 months ago, the men had planned to blow up a bridge near the governor's vacation home, then kidnap her and put her on a treason trial. Ultimately, 14 alleged plotters were arrested in late 2020. 6 of the group were charged in a federal court. The other 8 face separate charges. 2 of the men who faced federal charges have already pleaded guilty and are expected to testify against the remaining 4 at the trial. The undercover FBI agents that infiltrated the group are also expected to testify and have been forced by a judge to reveal their real names over the objections of prosecutors. The time of the FBI swoop came as Miss Whitmer's lockdown orders drew thousands of protesters to the state capitol, where many legally entered the government buildings or illegally entered the government buildings with semi-automatic rifles and other firearms. I mean, this is what's happening now. This is a civil war. This is an actual civil war. This is regular people becoming militia, joining in groups and going against the rule of law. And somehow thinking they can get away with it. You know why? Well, because Donald Trump, their former president and lunatic in chief, gave them the support, never condemned their behavior. Whenever there was a white nationalistic murder in America, Donald Trump never stood up against it. You know, that's what presidents do traditionally. You know, if there's a mass shooting, the president will get up and condemn the mass shooting. But because all of the mass shootings are done by white people, invariably in Donald Trump's, winning states, he didn't condemn a single one of them, which is a code to more militia that it's okay to behave in this way and get away with it. In the same way that Kyle Rittenhouse, a white nationalist, was able to be celebrated as a minor celebrity in and amongst far-right circles, paraded on Fox News, paraded at CPAC, paraded at these events, and is now attempting to sue anybody that has wronged him. He got off on a manslaughter charge, well, it was a murder charge, actually. He got off. They said it was self-defense, which it clearly wasn't. And so, what we're dealing with now is a country that has already taken the law into its own hands. Because Kyle Rittenhouse was a militia. These people planning this kidnapping plot are a militia. The guys that were just done for seditious conspiracy on January 6th, the Proud Boys and the Oath Keepers, they are militia. They show up in camouflage gear, face coverings with semi-automatic weapons. They are militarized. They are militia. And this is happening more and more and more and more and more and more. This is how it works now. But in terms of like gun control, Biden has brought in like one piece of legislation that I don't think has been ratified yet, and it is about registration, about gun ownership. It's about registering firearms and people with mental health problems not being allowed to purchase them. Obviously the Republican Party is sponsored by the National Rifle Association, and of course they're not going to allow anything through like that. So no, there's been not even with all the school shootings, there's no legislation has changed. Nothing. America is a country of guns, of self-defense. Because this is what Trump did. They changed the law in the Supreme Court to say that, defending yourself, this is how Kyle Rittenhouse got off. He got off on this new legislation, effectively, that said that even though he showed up to a peaceful protest with a firearm, he was defending himself. Apple have announced the M1 Ultra chip as the next breakthrough in Apple silicon. That's what you call a segue. No, we're not going to stream it. The M1 Ultra. It's one last chip to the M1 family. So there's a new Apple there's Air, the new Apple Air, iPad Air. Oh, Apple is releasing iOS 15.4 and iPad 15.4 next week. So this is new OS for your phone and for your iPad. I'm going to go and watch this. After this, I'll probably go. If I'm not watching Hal, I'll go and watch this. Watch it back. I just love an Apple event. I just do. I always have. I used to sit with like a whole bunch of screens and have because they never used to live stream it. You had to rely on journalists who were there, who were like taking photos and posting them. And so I would end up having screens all around me with all the different feeds. But now they live stream the show, so you can just watch it. But never used to be able to do that. Okay, well, we're going to talk to Hal in 15 minutes. So until then, I'd like to talk about Women's History Month, if that's possible, because somebody we want to talk about in this. Oh, the British Nappies has joined us. I'm not so sure if they have. Branson is with us, and Rhonda, and speaking in Italian, and David, and Light, and Lee, and Casey, and Freddie, and 600 British pounds, Michael. Well done. Well done. When the Space Shuttle Endeavour blasted off on its second mission, it carried the first African-American woman into space. But Mae Jemison is more than an astronaut. She's also a physician, a Peace Corps volunteer, a teacher, founder, and president of 2 technology companies. So I thought we should spend a little time taking a look at this remarkable woman. We're combining Black History Month with National Women's Month. It says after working at the Peace Corps, Jemison opened a private practice as a doctor. However, once Sally Ride became the first American woman in space in 1983, Jemison decided to apply to the astronaut program at NASA. She applied in 1985, but after the Space Shuttle Challenger exploded in 1986, NASA took a break from accepting new people. However, Jemison applied again in 1987 and was one of 15 people chosen out of over 2,000 applications. She was selected for NASA Astronaut Group 12, which was the first group chosen after the Challenger explosion. After being selected, Jemison trained with NASA and worked on projects at the Kennedy Space Center in Florida and the Shuttle Avionics Integration Laboratory. She received her first mission on September 28, 1989. Isn't that exciting? I mean, I often think about people who apply to be an astronaut and what it must be like to get that letter from NASA that says you got in. I mean, I know it's only the first stage in the process, but think about that for a moment. Like, to be an astronaut and yet to then kind of receive this letter on NASA-headed paper that says, yeah, you've been selected. Like, what that must be like. I think it's amazing. She was selected for NASA Astronaut Group 12. It was the first group chosen after the Challenger explosion. After being selected, Jemison trained with NASA and worked on projects at the Kennedy Space Center in Florida and the Shuttle Avionics Integration Laboratory. She received her first mission on the 28th of September, 1989. She was selected to join the STS-47 crew as a mission specialist. On September 12, 1992, she and 6 other astronauts went into space on the Space Shuttle Endeavour. The voyage made Jemison the first African-American woman in space. The team made 127 orbits around the Earth and returned to the Kennedy Space Center in Florida on the 20th of September 1992. Currently, Jemison is leading the 100-year Starship project through the United States Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency. This project works to make sure human space travel to another star is possible within the next 100 years. She also serves on the board of directors for many organizations, including the Kimberly-Clark Corps, Scholastic. These are all essential. Kimberly-Clark, of course, supplying paper towels to people all over the world. She's a member of the National Academy of Sciences Institute for Medicine. She's been inducted into the National Women's Hall of Fame, National Medical Association Hall of Fame, and Texas Science Hall of Fame. She's received multiple awards and honorary degrees, including the National Organization for Women's Intrepid Award and the Kilby Science Award. She currently lives in Houston, Texas. I mean, doesn't it make you feel completely talentless when you read about people like this? And you're just like, I really haven't done anything. It's quite something. What is M1 Ultra? So M1 is the new Apple Silicon chip. So they've moved away from Intel chips. So your MacBook Air that you have has an Intel i5 processor in it. So Apple decided that they would start building their own chips, stop buying them from Intel, and they're so fast that they've completely blown any other product out of the water. So now they're just developing the chip, because I'm using an M1 chip here on this computer. They're now developing the chip to make it faster and more efficient. And it's kind of amazing. So this is the new breakthrough, See if they've announced anything else while we've been talking. So they've got the M1 Pro, the M1 Max, and now the M1 Ultra. Apparently they're so fast that it's irrelevant. I mean, I've got the original M1 and it's just like lightning, so fast. We're really getting to the point now where, technology is... It used to be the case that technology was like just quick enough to use, and you'd be like, yeah, I can just about use this. Now it is so fast, it's so much faster than we will ever need. This computer that I'm using here, this is an Apple M1 MacBook Air. It is so fast. I would never need a computer as fast as this. It's dreamy. I love it. I don't actually love it. I hate it. But I mean, it's like, it's got a terrible camera. That's why I use this camera and not that camera down there. These are all the tricks. These are all the secrets. The New Scientist has an interesting piece about Mae Jemison, the first black woman to go into space in 1992. I also wanted to talk a little bit about space shuttles. Carl, have you ever seen a space shuttle in the flesh? Ever gone onto one or near one? I go and see one quite regularly here in California at the California Science Center. They have the Enterprise, which was the first space shuttle that was created. It never actually, it did go into kind of, I think they just used it for testing. But anyway, just to see a space shuttle is amazing. It's gigantic. It's a huge aeroplane. Well, it's a spaceship. Think about it, the first reusable spaceship. It's amazing that that this is something that we have and have created, a reusable spaceship. Obviously, Elon Musk is doing it all the time now, sending things up, and they even come straight back to Earth and land on the very landing pad that they took off from. Well, not quite, but almost. And they land backwards. That's what's so crazy, Because the thing about the space shuttle is it took off on a rocket strapped to a huge rocket boosters, and then it returned as a glider. The space shuttle didn't have any propulsion of its own. It basically just fell back to Earth. And they used a computer to guide it to land at Andrews Air Base. But the whole space shuttle re-entry is a glide. There's no gas. You can't turn on the it doesn't even have an engine by then, The engine was the rocket that it went up on. The only power that it had was the power to push itself out of orbit. So when it was up orbiting, or if it was connected to the International Space Station, it needed to break away from that and then push itself down out of that orbit back into the Earth's gravitational pull. So it had one little or three little, rocket boosters on the back that gave it that first little push to get it out of orbit. And then the whole ride back to Earth that took about, half an hour or whatever. The whole thing was it basically falling back to Earth. It was going very fast, and that's why it needed those thick polystyrene tiles on the bottom of it. Because it was those tiles that stopped the plane from heating up so much when it re-entered Earth's atmosphere and causing the plane to explode. Unfortunately, on one occasion, it did explode on re-entry because of a tile that was misplaced. Because there were two space shuttle explosions, you may remember. One of them was at takeoff. It took off, and then we watched it go, and then it exploded. And then the other one was on re-entry because of the tile. The tiles are about this big, and they're basically thick, lightweight polystyrene tiles with a kind of Kevlar coating. And so, it was Challenger, and it was Columbia and Challenger were the two space shuttles that tragically exploded. Are you talking about the guy that did a free fall from a hot air balloon from the edge of space? That was one of the greatest things I ever saw. He had a head cam and a GoPro and stuff, and they filmed it. But he basically, for Red Bull, that's right, yeah, Red Bull sponsored it. He went up in a hot air balloon, just a small hot air balloon, enough to carry the weight of one person in a small basket. And it took him to the edge of space where you could see the curvature of the Earth, where it changes from blue to black. The point where it changes from blue to black. So we're talking at about, I would estimate, maybe you could look it up, but let me guess. I'm guessing that is around 60,000 feet. Around 60,000 feet. Now, bear in mind, it was televised. Yeah, we were going to watch him die, basically. He had like breathing apparatus, but I'm guessing that was around 60,000 feet. And he went up and he literally climbed out of the balloon. He was wearing a kind of space suit, with wings on it, like bat wings. And he obviously had a parachute, or a couple of parachutes, hopefully. And he then just did a free fall, able still to use gravity. I'm guessing it was around 60,000 feet. And he fell, and he fell, and he fell. It was 40,000. Interesting. So 40,000. Let me ask. 24 miles in feet. Let's see. See if Siri can answer the question. 126,000 feet. What? How many meters was it? "39 kilometers in feet." I don't believe it was that high. 127,000 feet. That is insane. The guy's crazy. Anyway, you can watch it on YouTube, but he basically jumps out and he falls from the highest any human has ever, and he basically flies through the air with breathing apparatus, because humans can't breathe above 10,000 feet. That's where the oxygen runs out. It was the most amazing thing I ever saw, and he landed exactly where he was supposed to. I'm Anthony Davis. Been enjoying you today. Interesting. We're going to talk to Hal in just a couple of seconds and find out what's happening to his show today. Let me just do a final check on the on Apple's event and see what they're announcing. Mac Studio and a new studio display. This is Mac Studio is an entirely new Mac with the M1 Max and M1 Ultra, and it's basically like a cube device that I guess and presume is for professional people. And there's a new Mac OS Monterey 12.3 that comes out next week as well, they've announced. And then, of course, the new M1 Ultra chip. But Mac Studio does look interesting. Looks like a whole new thing. Anyway, it's nice to know that they're still innovating. Because there's a lot of criticism of Apple sometimes that they've run out of ideas, and I completely disagree. I literally could not disagree more. I think that the advent of stuff like Apple Watch, everyone's wearing an Apple Watch. Literally anybody I meet's got an Apple Watch these days. And it's like, do you realize they have now sold more Apple Watches than all of the Timexes sold in history? All of the Casio watches sold in history. They've sold more Apple Watches than. It's kind of quite something. Let's find out. Your pal Hal. Let's see if he's as much of an Apple fanboy as I am. Or maybe it's just me, Maybe it's just me. Good morning.
Bad news, Anthony. It's just you.
You're not a PC and an Android person, are you?
Samsung Galaxy, baby.
Oh, no. That means we're never going to be able to meet. I was so looking forward to meeting you.
I know. It's, believe me, I'm as crestfallen as you are. And, but I'm one of these weirdos, Anthony. In many ways, but among them. I didn't want to say anything. Yeah. Yes. Among them is that I have a MacBook computer and an Android phone. How mixed up is that? How mixed? You know what? I'm just used to it. There are some. I'm a creature of habit, not a creature of change. I fight change. I kick and scream against it. So,
but I'll be honest. I think now that people use like Google for so many of their things, Google Mail and Google Calendar, and it's all cross-compatible now. Yeah. So I don't think it's really a problem like it used to be.
And you mentioned the Apple Watch. Do you know what this is, Anthony?
Not a clue.
I found this when I was back home in New Jersey. This is from my childhood. This is my Swatch watch.
Oh, I love a Swatch watch. Are you kidding me?
Yeah.
I used to work for Swatch years ago. And,
What?
Yeah. I used to like host and do comedy at their watch launches. And,
I didn't realize you were. I didn't know you were a comedian, Anthony.
Yeah, it was a stand-up for like 25 years. Are you kidding me?
How come? Why are you burying the lead here?
Well, I don't really do it now. I mean, I was doing a little bit of stand-up in LA before the pandemic, but just to try out,
Can you give me some material? No, I'm not going to put you on the spot.
I died spectacularly at the Laugh Factory on Hollywood Boulevard.
Sure.
Just
Sunset.
a few months before, on Sunset.
Yeah.
And I died spectacularly there. And it was a shame because, I'd been put on as a favor through a friend of mine who was a comedian here, and he knew the owner and all that, and there was a lot of heat on me. And it went so badly, Hal, that was pretty much the last time I did a show in LA.
You know what? It's a badge of honor, though. Every comedian must just fall on their face once in a while. Once in a while keeps you honest. So I feel your pain.
It's entirely necessary to go through that. But I used to play at these clubs called the Fourth Wall. Are you aware of the Fourth Wall clubs? There was 4 of them.
No, but I'm aware of the fourth wall. Breaking the fourth wall, etc.
Yeah,
I know the term.
It was a series of venues called Fourth Wall, and there was one up on Western, like a cafe near Ralph's that they converted into a comedy club. There was one further down Western in kind of near a Koreatown that I used to do regularly. There was a little place in Atwater Village, a little wine bar with a comedy club in the basement that I used to do.
Nice.
And so I really enjoyed it, but, it was an education because it's so different to England, so I had to like relearn everything.
Oh, sure. I mean, just a bit of a culture shock, I'd imagine.
Well, Americans like to repeat the joke that British people don't do. So I don't know if you're aware of this like joke structure. So basically, the American comedian would basically say they do the setup. So
yes.
I'm just trying to imagine what it might be. So that the punchline would be, and he found a $20 bill in my pants. And then the British people would all like laugh, and that would be the end of the joke. And then the American comedian has to come back with a second explainer line for what the joke was, and then gets a second laugh. This is a whole new concept to me, that every joke needs to be explained in a repeat of the punchline, but with just explaining what happened for a second laugh. So
spoon feeding it to your audience. Yes,
fascinating to me. Absolutely fascinating. Yeah.
Oh yeah. No,
really
I've been there. I know what you're talking about. Listen, I will say this, Anthony. I believe the Brits are on a higher plane of humor than Americans. I think comedy gets born in Britain, and it gets watered down a little bit, like the top shelf alcohol at a bar, and then it gets brought over here. The Office, I think, is the prime example. But I love like so much British comedy, like Look Around You, Garth Marenghi's Dark Place. There's so much. I'm a big fan of this comedian from Britain, sketch comedy performer Peter Serafinowicz.
Yeah, I know Peter Serafinowicz.
Yeah, I love him.
He's also a voice actor. He did a couple of voices in the Star Wars movies. He's a wonderful guy.
Little Britain. There's so much. I mean, Britain gave us the Beatles. Britain also gave us Monty Python. I am in awe. I bow to British comedy. It is, and I feel like it's sharper, it's smarter. I'm a huge fan of Armando Iannucci. And I feel like he's come over here. Like if you watch Veep. Yeah. The jokes per capita, the pacing of it, and his other film In the Loop, so good. So yeah, I think you're onto something. Americans need to be like, here, let me spoon feed you what's funny about this.
But
that
you
much
say
more.
that all my favorite comedy is American, like the stuff that I like, Curb and Woody Allen
Yeah.
movies and all of these things. That's the kind of humor that I really, Mel Brooks is probably my biggest influence. Blazing Saddles taught me everything I needed to know about comedy, and there's no
Oh,
British
yeah.
influence there at all.
True. I mean, listen, much of it is was born here as well. Charlie Chaplin, Buster Keaton, the Marx Brothers, the Three Stooges, and on to Mel Brooks. But then you go back to structures. Every story we know is born from Shakespeare. Well, two sources: Shakespeare and The Twilight Zone.
I think you'll find Charlie Chaplin was born in London.
Oh. My bad.
Admittedly, he did move to America at a young age to seek his fortune, and then he famously met Max Sennett.
Yes,
here's
Max
an
Sennett
interesting
Studios.
Right, which weirdly I didn't realize. I was in Silver Lake or somewhere. I was at a one of these holistic fairs. Somebody dragged me along to a holistic fair, and I took a photograph. And the geotagging that my iPhone did said it was the Max Sennett Studios.
Mm-hmm. I know
and
exactly
I was like,
where that is.
Hang on a second. This is amazing. This place is where movies effectively started. Not in Hollywood.
Rich with history.
East LA.
Yes.
And that really kind of blew my mind. And then, of course, Chaplin got his own studios, which is on La Brea, famously is now the Muppet Studios, where the Jim Henson Company is based. And there's a big... But that's where The Great Dictator was made, and, because that's, like, famously the Chaplin soundstage, which they still use. And I don't know if you're interested, but, you can go in there and see a Jim Henson live show now that they do a couple of times a year called Puppet Up.
Puppet Up. I have a lot of friends who are involved from the comedy scene.
I've been to see Puppet Up a few times now. And because Brian Henson, who now runs his dad's organization, he organizes it and he hosts it. And he was my neighbor until recently.
Oh, lovely.
What's happening in your show in the last couple of seconds that we have?
Nonsense, shenanigans, pop culture, and just a smorgasbord. A smorgasbord.
Love it. Well, you take your Android phone and have the greatest day.
Enjoy your Apple products.
I love it. All right. Take care, Hal. Bye for now. See you soon. That's your pal, Hal. He's next. This is Backchannel. I'm Anthony. I am back tomorrow at 9 a.m. Pacific.